Holy City Center Radio is episode 185, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Friday, October 20th, 2023. Plenty to talk about on this Friday. I hope your week is wrapped up or about to be whenever you are listening to this, and you are on your way to a fantastic weekend. Of course, you know what you need to do each and every Friday. Go to holycitycenter.com/events. So you can see what's going on all around town, no matter the weather, no matter your mood. There's all sorts of things going on, and you can find some fun plans right there. Speaking of the website, not much going on here. Been fairly quiet since the last episode. Just been doing some work. I did stop by Berkeley's, which is downtown, of course, for some lunch. And it was tasty. Got just a turkey club type sandwich. It was very big. Filled me up. It was tasty. I know, many people who have eaten there before, and they also have good things to say. They have, some appetizers and then some sandwiches, including like a Philly cheesesteak. They also have a veggie version of it for those of you who don't eat meat. In addition to the sandwiches and apps that I mentioned, they also have some entrees. They have some desserts. They have a bar so you can get drinks. I'm surprised I hadn't been here yet. It's been around for a while, and I always hear good things, but just hadn't made it over there yet. So I didn't really even know what the setup was like, but it's mostly outdoor seating, patio. There are some seats inside if you want. The bar is like half and half, inside and out, one of those things where like the garage door kind of opens. So if the weather is nice, it's a fantastic spot to be. There's some shade, so you can, you're out of the direct sunlight if it's a hotter day. But yeah, just enjoyed it. It was a nice little spot to stop by for lunch. Otherwise, been pretty quiet. Got some fun things coming up this weekend, which I will report back on Monday. Plans are to take part in a media event involving Jeremy Renner. That's right, the actor, known for all sorts of things, but probably best known for being part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe as Hawkeye, aka Clint Barton. He is going to be at the Sweetgrass Lounge, which is Sweetgrass Vodka's, kind of local bar hangout at the refinery. You may remember Renner is now a part owner of the vodka company, and he's coming down for bottle signings and meet and greets with fans. I'll be going to a media thing beforehand where I'm sure they're going to talk about the partnership. And then I'm going to hang out for a little bit because the event, even if you're didn't buy tickets to meet Jeremy Renner, they're going to have Midnight City playing. They're going to have things going on outside. The refinery has that little amphitheater, and other businesses are there, like the Whale, which is like a craft beer spot. So there'll be all sorts of activities and things going on. So looking forward to checking that out and seeing the type of crowd that comes to see a big movie celebrity. So it should be a lot of fun. Also, a couple friends of mine who I went to high school and college with actually are visiting, planning on hanging out with them Friday during the day. So looking forward to that. Not sure what we're going to do. Otherwise, I think outside of the event with Jeremy Renner on Friday evening, I think I don't have any plans this weekend. I think it's going to be kind of quiet, laying low until Monday, where I will be moderating a mayoral forum for the folks running for mayor of Charleston. That'll be held at the Charleston Museum. I've talked about it a couple times, being put on by the Historic Charleston Foundation. If you're interested, tickets are free. You just have to, go register online, and hopefully I'll see you all there. But without any further delay, let's get into the top stories. You may remember on the last podcast, there's a lot of confusion about what was going on with the Charleston County School District Board of Trustees and Superintendent Dr. Eric Gallion. There were reports that first it came out that there was a special called meeting being held where they were going to possibly discuss what appeared on the agenda, that Dr. Gallion had submitted essentially a resignation, but it was going to be some kind of settlement involved with it. But then we found out the day of the meeting, which was on Tuesday, that Dr. Gallion had rescinded that resignation / settlement letter and wanted to stay with the district. And I didn't know, was this special called meeting still going to go on? You just don't know what this board is going to do. Were the Moms for Liberty back candidates going to try to make a big to-do out of this? Well, he submitted it, and even though he tried to rescind it, it's too late. He already submitted it, so we're going to go ahead and there was also unclear what exactly his resignation because it wasn't really considered that. It was considered like a release, and again, it mentioned a settlement. So it was just a lot of confusion, and I wasn't exactly sure what was going to happen. Turns out not much, but still, just classic moment for this board. So the Charleston County School District headquarters was packed, despite people not knowing what was going to happen. There was a lot of people there, from the community. They've been coming out in droves to support Dr. Eric Gallion in this fight against specifically those 5 members of the board. And so they were still there at Tuesday just to see what happened during this special called meeting, if anything. No surprise, there was an executive session where the public is not allowed to hear or see what is going on. The board has done this quite a bit, not completely out of the norm. Boards do this all over the country. But they've seemed to have been abusing this privilege. So it was interesting. Okay, what's going to come out of this meeting? And the classic moment was just minutes before they were about to return, the power goes completely out. So absolutely no power in the building, and just maybe people there were like, "Oh boy, could this be a harbinger of things to come?" No, when they returned. Board chair Pamela McKinney was speaking about some things. She had to use her phone so she could see her notes. It was just perfect. I mean, as chaotic and wild as this board has been, just the power going out is just perfect. It just chef's kiss. So when they came out of the meeting, the public learned that Dr. Gallion, as we mentioned, was in talks to end his contract with the district. However, he rescinded that settlement agreement in a letter to his attorney. So board chair Pamela McKinney came out and said that the district's attorney and Dr. Gallion's attorney will remain in conversation, but no action was taken. So after all of that, the end result was nothing happened at the meeting. And does that mean that this possible release settlement is completely done? No, not necessarily, even though Dr. Gallion has said he doesn't want to be released. He wants to stay on. Who knows what could happen with that? That aside, there is still the investigation into Dr. Gallion, which we've talked about before. So he is still on administrative leave while that's going on. So there's still a lot up in the air, but if you missed it, no action was taken at that special called meeting on Tuesday evening. And as of this moment, Dr. Gallion is still the superintendent, but is still on paid administrative leave. I will keep you up to date with any changes as we go forward. You may remember a story about a lawsuit involving a man who had died after an interaction with police and EMS, where he was injected with ketamine and then ultimately passed. There was a settlement in that lawsuit, and it would seem that you might get used to hearing more of. You should probably get used to hearing more about these types of lawsuits going forward. Now that that one went through and was ruled in favor of his estate. So there's now a federal lawsuit alleging due process violations, negligence, and assault and battery by the Charleston County EMS. This is just the latest legal battle, as I mentioned, involving the controversial use of ketamine. For those who don't know what ketamine is, it is an anesthetic that is commonly used in human and veterinary medicine. So you may have even heard about ketamine treatments where people are kind of getting like microdosed with it for people who have severe mental illness, or treatment resistant depression and things like that. So there are uses for it in medicine, but this use of it to calm down, whether they're combative or unruly, members of the community that are in custody, that is where a lot of questions are coming in, especially a lot of the times those people, or maybe they have a police officer restraining them at the same time, and it could combine to be devastating on the victim. So the drug, in addition to being used for medical reasons, it's also abused as an illicit drug because it does have hallucinogenic effects. So this particular situation involves a gentleman by the name of Randy Botten, who stopped breathing after paramedics twice injected him with ketamine, according to a complaint that he recently filed. So yes, he did survive, thankfully, this whole ordeal. Now, he was not sedated for any medical reason, but rather to restrain him. He was drunk at the time. However, he was already bound by his feet, hands, and chest to a gurney. So he's already completely strapped down to a gurney, and they still opted to sedate him not once, but twice. And so the lawsuit contends that those injections violated his constitutional rights. His attorney, Dan Bowles, said that ketamine is used solely for behavioral control. It has nothing to do with medical treatment. Botten was ultimately intubated and revived, regaining consciousness in a hospital. So he did lose consciousness, needed help breathing, which is why he was intubated. Thankfully, he regained consciousness and has, is out of the hospital and it has a better end result than some of the other instances we've seen with ketamine use. So Bowles filed Botton's claim in U.S. District Court on October 10th. It was not long after the aforementioned settlement I was talking about at the top of the segment, which involved another ketamine-related lawsuit that ultimately resulted in a $1.1 million payout. In that case, James Britt died in October of 2019, 2 weeks after he was injected with ketamine during a roadside arrest in Mount Pleasant. Last year now, the county in North Charleston paid out more than $600 to one of Bowles' other clients who was given a shot of ketamine during a false arrest in 2017. Bowles also represents another man by the name of Victor Perez, who was also drugged with ketamine by county paramedics 2 months before Britt died. Perez's civil suit is pending in the Charleston County Court of Common Pleas. The attorney contends that Britt's death could have been avoided if only the county's EMS followed up on patients who had been given the drug in the past. See, what happens is once, whatever you want to say, patients, the person under arrest, once they're out of the ambulance, according to the attorney Bowles, EMS doesn't track what happens. So they're not like staying up to date. I'm sure they're passing along information, obviously, to the hospital, but they're not following up or things like that. And so the attorney is alleging this is, part of many problems with using ketamine in these situations. So, like I said, don't be surprised to see more lawsuits. Obviously, this attorney, Bowles, has seemed to have narrowed the market here, or cornered the market rather. And as I just mentioned in detail, that he has several lawsuits going for people, from anywhere from people who have died after being injected with ketamine to the situation I mentioned where someone had to be revived and intubated. So don't be surprised to see more of these lawsuits, not just here in South Carolina, but across the country, especially since their $1.1 million ruling came out in their favor. Now, on the state level, as far as legislation, back in January of 2021, legislators, here in South Carolina considered banning ketamine for incapacitating criminal suspects, but has not been reintroduced since that time. So it's been over 2 years since local legislators have even attempted to do anything involving ketamine in reference to incapacitating criminal suspects. So that's the latest update on that locally. Again, I would imagine we're going to see more and more of this. It's an interesting story, and how much of it is ketamine to blame? Is it a combination of things? It'll be interesting to see how this plays out, whether it's here or across the country. Another update to a story that thankfully we haven't talked about in a long time. More than a decade after the initial lawsuit was filed, a victim is finally getting a payout from the Citadel after being sexually assaulted by a former camp counselor. The mother of the victim filed the initial complaint in December of 2011 regarding actions taken by the now 44-year-old Louis Skip Reeville, an accused and charged rapist. You may remember this case. Just awful and disgusting behavior by Reeville. Thankfully, he is behind bars after being charged with these crimes. Now, through the South Carolina Insurance Reserve Fund, the Citadel is going to be paying out $50,000. Documents show that Reeville was a camp counselor at the Citadel from 2000 to 2006. Now, that is where some of the problems were, of course. It started at the Citadel in May of 2007. The Citadel received information that Reeville had engaged in sexually inappropriate conduct with multiple children under the age of 16 at the summer camp back in 2001 and 2002. So when they received this information, he was no longer a camp counselor there, but it had been from 2000 to 2006. So they were made aware of this information. The lawsuit states that the Citadel investigated and shared that information with the South Carolina Insurance Reserve Fund, so they were well aware of it. However, that information, according to this lawsuit, was not shared with law enforcement or future employers of Reeville, or even more shocking, the parents of the children that Reeville worked with. In the fall of 2007, the plaintiff's child began taking athletic supervision from Reeville and Mount Pleasant. The lawsuit states that the Citadel knew, or should have known, that Reeville had taken another job with children, and they stayed silent about his previous sexual misconduct. Then finally, in 2012, Reeville was sentenced to 50 years in prison after pleading guilty to 22 child sex charges in Berkeley, Charleston, and Dorchester counties. So just to kind of wrap it up, this particular plaintiff, their child did not see Reeville at the Citadel. It happened after he had left there, but the Citadel knew about accusations regarding him. And although they investigated and shared it with that South Carolina Insurance Reserve Fund, they believe that what did not happen and should have is that the Citadel, should have contacted children who Reeville may have had contact with. They did not warn anyone when he took a new job that involved children. So, is that the case? We'll find out as this moves forward. But we see these situations a lot with Jim Jordan currently, running, I guess is the right word, for Speaker of the House. As of this recording, he has lost 2 votes and has not gotten moved to that position yet. But it's in the news where when he was a wrestling coach at Ohio State University, there was a sexual assault scandal involving a doctor and not just members of the wrestling team, but other teams as well. And that members of that team, they claim they went to Jordan, told him what was going on, and that he did not report it or take any action from it. This is all alleged, although the wrestlers made these claims under oath in court, and Jim Jordan did not offer to testify or go on the record about this case. So that's the most prominent thing we see in the news, but we see this a lot, unfortunately, where institutions don't always do what they should in these situations, whether it's ignoring accusations or sweeping things under the rug. We've seen it in churches as well, where people leave a church, but they are able to get a job at another one. Or in this case, despite these allegations against him, he's getting jobs with children. And it always seems that these big institutions drop the ball at some point in time. And unfortunately, those who suffer are some of the most vulnerable amongst us, children. So obviously, I'm sure if any of you have been in Charleston for any length of time, you're at least a little familiar with this case. So sad that it's still going on and victims are still looking for compensation. Sure, Reeville's in jail and they got, what justice can you really get? But, at least he's in jail, but still this drags on. And obviously putting settlements aside and, all that, anyone who was a victim could, they're traumatized in all likelihood and will remain so for years, if not their whole life, depending on, any progress they can make, if any is available to make. So a sad story, but glad as much as you can be that victims are getting still able to look for some sort of compensation out of this horrific situation. All right, let's try to wrap up this episode with some fun news as we head into the weekend. Something that is coming up on Sunday. This sounds pretty fun. The Charleston RiverDogs are partnering with the Sweetgrass Lounge, who I mentioned earlier. They're having the event with Jeremy Renner on Friday, which, of course, if you're hearing this Friday morning, you can see if there's still tickets available for the meet and greet and all that. But then on Sunday, they're following that up with a one-of-a-kind wiffle ball tournament. Should be a lot of fun. It's going to be like a home run derby style tournament. So you're not going to be playing like games, you're not playing like 5 innings or whatever. It's just going to be like a home run derby style tournament that's going to end up becoming a monthly event at the Sweetgrass Lounge. They say that each of these events will have a live DJ. There'll be food and beverage specials and prizes, among some other fun things. It's free for all ages, so if you want to participate, you don't have to pay anything. And the winner of the tournament will receive some sort of grand prize that will be announced at the event. The food and beverage deals that I mentioned before are not just at Sweetgrass Lounge. The Whale, the craft beer store next to it, will also be having some promotions during that time. And if you don't really want to partake, you're still encouraged to come, bring a beach chair if you want, and sit out on the lawn where they'll be hosting the Home Run Derby. Again, the Refinery, just a really cool venue with a lot of open space. To not just host concerts and things, but now fun events like this. So if you're interested, you can head on over to 1640 Meeting Street Road. That's where the Refinery is, and you'll find the Sweetgrass Lounge at one end of that building. And again, that'll be on Sunday. I believe it's starting at, 12:30 to 3:30 is when it will be running. If you can't make it this time, they said it will be a monthly event, so keep your eyes peeled. And lastly, a new restaurant has been announced by a popular restaurant group, specifically the Neighborhood Dining Group, who is behind restaurants like Husk, Delaney Oyster House, Monero, and The James, which is a fairly new restaurant in James Island. They announced that they plan on opening a new steakhouse concept downtown. The restaurant will be called Marbled and Finn, and it will be it's scheduled to open in early 2024. You know how those things go sometimes, so who knows, but that is their plan. They're going to be at 480 East Bay Street. I looked up the address. It appears it was some sort of non-restaurant business. I forgot what it was, a law firm or whatever. So it's not like a very big space, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with it and how they transform something that wasn't meant for a restaurant into one. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. I like their other restaurants, so I'm also excited to see how this new concept is. They said in a press release that they plan on pushing the boundaries of the modern day steakhouse. They'll have a menu with what they say will feature premium cuts of beef, fresh seafood, and a wine list that spans the globe. Of course, they'll also have extensive spirits, whiskeys, beers, and all that as well. So that's about all that's been announced. So there's not too much to go on. It's basically just a press release with, the types of words that I just mentioned where you're like, okay, that doesn't really give me a ton of details. I can see what they're aiming for. So I'm excited, as we get closer to hear more and more about it. You can follow along with their progress on Instagram. You can see what they end up posting. Of course, they are. If you go to Instagram, it'll be at Marble and Finn CHS is their handle. The link in the show notes can bring you there as well. So excited to see what the Neighborhood Dining Group brings with this steakhouse concept. And of course, just like everything else, I will keep you posted. That'll do it for this edition of Holy City Center Radio. I hope you had a fantastic week and you enjoyed this show. Go out there, enjoy your weekend. Head to holycitycenter.com/events if you're looking for something to do. But before you head out and have fun, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any episodes. It also helps me out. Make sure that there's a chance that the podcast will end up in other people's feeds or as suggestions. Other things that help out are rating, reviews, whether it's a star rating or an actual written review. Anything you can do on the streaming platform you're listening to this podcast on, please do. It'll greatly help out. If you want to go that extra mile, you can go to patreon.com/holycitycenter and sign up for one of those support tiers. You can also go to holycitycenter.com/merch, where you can pick up some sweet stuff it's holycitycenter.com/shop, where you can pick up some sweet merch like hats, t-shirts, bottle openers, matchbook with the Holy City Center logo on it, and some other things as well. Big thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Soundsystem for producing this and every episode of Holy City Center Radio. And a huge thank you to Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show as well. I will speak to you all again on Monday, so just a few days away. Until then, though, good night and good luck.